and welcome to the Squiggly Careers podcast. I'm Helen Tupper.
And I'm Sarah Ellis.
And we're the hosts of the podcast, and this week we have a special episode for you. We're always here every week talking about the ups, downs and ins and outs of Squiggly Careers, but today you are going to hear our live You Coach You book launch event that we did, where we brought lots of different people, 4 different people actually, to Manchester and to London to share with us some of their insights, some of their wisdom connected to the chapters of our brand new book.
And so, like all of you listening, I actually wasn't at the London event because I got COVID the day before our book launched. So that was a stressful week. I'm absolutely fine now, but it does mean that I missed out on the conversation, which is another good reason for recording them so that we can share them with everyone, because I'll get the opportunity to hear from Adrienne and James, who will introduce as we go through the podcast. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from them because I couldn't be part of it on the evening either. And thank you to everybody who did come along, because we really appreciated having your support there. And it was so nice to see some people in person for the first time in a long time.
So the way that we've structured this is we have taken each of the chapters of the book. So you've got a chapter on resilience, on time, on self-belief, on relationships, on progression and on purpose. And then we've got a clip of each of our guests talking about their experiences and their insights related to each of those chapters. That does mean that we really weren't able to include the entire conversation because it would be about a 2-hour-long podcast. But what we have done is put some extended edits. So there's a London edit and there's a Manchester edit, which I feel sounds quite cool, Sarah. The London edit and the Manchester edit.
Does it?
Just, I don't know, maybe.
Or maybe it's cool for us, I think.
Yeah, cool for us. Anyway, if you do want to hear more from Adrienne, more from James, more from Lee, more from Drew, you'll be able to go and listen to those extended edits on our website. We'll put all the links for those in the show note for you.
So first, you're going to hear me talking to Lee Chambers, who's a psychologist and wellbeing consultant. And he's going to talk about resilience and how he actually lost the ability to walk and how he found his way through that very knotty moment, not really in his career, but in his life. It's always worth reminding ourselves, I think, that however shiny someone looks on the surface, I promise you, no one has a straight line to success. Everybody has knotty moments. Everyone has these really tough times. So we're actually going to ask you to tell us some tough stuff as our way to get to know you both. So maybe share something that has felt quite knotty for you, Lee, so far in your career, but also what helped you to be resilient during that time.
Yeah, so I think a big one for me was losing the ability to walk. And at the time, I was running a European video game company, so I was here, there, and everywhere, running at 100 miles an hour, and then suddenly I literally stopped. And a big thing for me in that period was it was very challenging. I had 2 young children at the time, and I had to really start to think about the small things. I had a lot of time to reflect. And I suppose what that really did for me in a lot of ways was give me the space to actually see that every step I took on that year to recover was a small win. The lampposts became like big trophies. And a lot of those elements around resilience, I actually had to find ways to not suppress my emotions, because I did feel, some despair, some grief for losing the ability to walk. But I found ways to express that, and I actually realised that resilience was quite creative, a way to actually express myself to other people, to talk and to share and to ask for help, which sometimes as a young man who wanted to take on the world and do everything, it was quite an eye-opening experience that so many people are there to support you. And as I got back onto my feet, it actually caused me to squiggle in a big way. I went back into what I originally studied, and after 12 years of studying and completing a degree, I actually then went back in and started that career. And sometimes the resilience from the journey, from the twists and the turns, from the times where you redirect and sidestep, actually really offer you a way to stop, to pause, and to see where you want to push and progress for the next bit of momentum that you generate. And for me, obviously, that was quite a knotty time. And I suppose as I undid that knot, I actually found a lot of little lessons and little treasures, things about me that I didn't know, that as I unpicked that knot, I actually started to see that there's probably more I could do, and it really started to help me see how I could take on a different journey, really thinking and taking my kids by my side.
So Lee's story was so inspiring, and I do hope you kind of listened to that extended edit with him in Manchester, because there's so much wisdom that he was sharing with us. Next, you're going to hear from me talking to Adrienne Herbert. Adrienne is the host of the Power Hour podcast and also the book Power Hour as well. And so she felt like a very appropriate person to talk to about time. So this is what she had to say about how we can reclaim time for ourselves. So one of the other chapters is around time, and I thought it would be brilliant as a host of the Power Hour podcast, as author of the book about Power Hour. Who else should we talk to about time but Adrienne? So the reason we put time in the book as a chapter was because conversations about, feeling like my time is well spent, or how do I find work-life fit, or feeling like I'm overwhelmed, we often have people come to us for help in that space. Why do you think it's a challenge for people, and what have you learned through the conversations that you've had and the work that you do that can help people with their time?
Yeah, I think time is, it's a resource that I think at the moment we've never been more time poor. I think most people, from the moment they open their eyes in the morning until they go to bed, until they go back to sleep, there are so many demands on our time now, and our attention, our energy. I think the ability to actually focus on one thing and to kind of, I talk about reclaiming your time, and that's what, the whole concept of the Power Hour. I say to people, reclaim some of your time before you give all of that time, energy, focus, whatever, to everything and everyone else, because there will always be things there to distract you and to pull you away from it. And so it's quite interesting when we think about time and saying, okay, with time management or productivity, or it's not about cramming every minute of every day, every hour has to be useful or productive or used well, time well spent. What does that really mean? When we think about time well spent, or the idea, actually you can't manage time, you can't get more of it, we can't buy it, we can't get a refund, we can't get more time back. Like, it is a finite resource, and just accepting that as well can be quite, I don't know, if you think about it in a different way and think, okay, if you're doing something that is fulfilling, using your time in service of others, it's not always a way of measure. What's the output? And I think that's what we've kind of become quite used to, is measuring our output of how we use our time, how we spend our time, and trying to kind of basically squeeze more out of it, which isn't always possible. So, yeah, I think when it comes to how people can start to think about that and what they can do with that, is like really just doing an honest assessment and looking and saying, okay, what are the things that I spend a lot of time on that I enjoy, that energize me, that give me more energy than they take? And what are the things that I feel are a drain on my time, or they're an obligation or a commitment? Or, if you do feel like your time poor, why? Where's it being spent? So really kind of assessing it and being quite honest and saying, it's not selfish or self-indulgent to reclaim time and to say, I'm going to spend the first hour or whatever hour or whatever day doing something for me. It is absolutely necessary. We cannot give all of our time away, and free time has become availability. Maybe it's just free time that needs to be ring-fenced and kept. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
No, it does. I'm going to come back actually a little bit on Power Hour to just really get into that, to make it as actionable as possible for people. In the book, actually, we talk about time trade-offs and trade-ups. That, to your point around finite time, you can't just keep adding stuff in. Like, it's fine to want to achieve stuff, but you have to sometimes make trade-offs in terms of what you're choosing to spend your time on, so that you can focus on the things that are important to you. And they're not necessarily like long-term commitments. They're just right here, right now. You need to make some choices. We've got to make hard choices. So maybe just talk to us a little bit about the Power Hour, how people can make that work for them as a concept with their time.
Sure. So as I mentioned, it's about reclaiming time. So for me, it is the first hour of the day, because for me, as someone who's an extrovert, someone who's easily distracted, someone who loves to talk, that's the only time in my day when I can actually find solitude, because my son is still asleep and no one's sending me emails or Slack messages or whatever. So I can use that first hour to do whatever I want. I could go for a run, I could listen to a podcast, I can stretch, I can write, I can do whatever. You could literally make a tea and do nothing. And it seems quite counter of like you're getting up early to do nothing. But again, if that's something that you need, white space to enjoy, then that's what the Power Hour is in its simplest form, is, take that first hour. But if people want to think about, again, why should I do it? How to start? It's like, what are the things that you constantly say, I don't have time for that? Like, I wish I could read more books, but I don't have time. Or I wish I could, get into running, I don't have time. Or the kids and work, and there's all these things, and you won't have more time. You know, we all think that, don't we? You know, oh, I'm really full at the moment, but I'll look back to you next Thursday, there'll be more time. You know, in like 2 months or next year. And that's for so many people. You know, I say in the book, tomorrow stays tomorrow for so many people. When the kids are older, when I've got more money, when I've lost more weight, when I have more time, we're kidding ourselves. So I really want to kind of, you know, use the word power because it's actually quite empowering as well to say, I deserve to start my day with something that is, for me, it's going to fill me up, it's going to energize me, it's a priority. So anything that's a priority shouldn't be at the bottom of your list. You've done everything else in the day, the work, the kids, everything, and then whatever's left of you, like, oh, if I have time, I'll do that thing. Put yourself at the top of your priority list.
So the other guest that joined me when I didn't have Sarah on stage with me in London was James Routledge. And James is the founder of an amazing organisation called Santus, which is all about, you know, changing the conversation around mental health and giving people the skills to support themselves with their mental health too. And he talked about where he got his self-belief from. So self-belief is one of the chapters in the book. And James, he's so grounded and he's gone through so much change in his career, actually. Businesses that have succeeded and also a business that didn't succeed. And so this is his insights on where he gets his self-belief from. James, I just want to talk to you a little bit about self-belief because I look at you in your career and I see some of the amazing things that you've achieved, like how you've scaled Sanctus, the fact that you started a business at university when you were, you know, right at that point. I sense that you've got a high level of self-belief, so I'd love to explore that a little bit because maybe you're like, actually, Helen. So I sense that you have, and I'm just intrigued about where it comes from. How do you not have limiting beliefs that hold you back?
As soon as you said the word, I started thinking about my mum and dad, thinking about the privilege I've had, I suppose, in just being told from an early age that I can kind of do anything I want. And I think I've kind of always felt like that, really. Not that I've ever, done everything I've ever wanted, but I've always felt capable, I think, which I feel really lucky to say. Yeah, but then other than that, I mean, I think it's a bit of like a knife edge, because on the other side of a high amount of self-belief, there's also a high amount of doubt at times. Like I can still be a really harsh critic of myself. I can set myself really high standards or be really, really hard on myself. So I think I've had a great privilege to be given a massive platform to go on and try stuff and take risks. I've got like a weird relationship with risk, really. I just, you know, I'm happy to kind of give anything a go, really. I don't really mind failing. My first business at uni, for example, yeah, it was great to give it a go, but it was a failure. It was a flat-out failure in terms of a business, but I just kind of followed my instinct with it, really. And I feel really lucky to say that. I think that, you know, that is a real privilege to say that. But yeah, I've kind of always just felt like I could, and why not give it a go? And if it doesn't work, then what's the worst that can happen? Which is a sentence I often say to myself in my head.
Okay, that's quite interesting actually about that sentence and that mantra. So we often talk about this like duality between your inner critic and your inner coach. And what we really want to do is like turn down the volume on the inner critic and turn up the volume on the inner coach. So why in the book there's like 100 coach yourself questions that like in the moment that your inner critic starts to turn the volume up, you can ask yourself a coach yourself question to, you know, turn the volume up on the inner coach. So you said there, for example, when maybe the doubt might show up, that inner critic pops out, you will say like, what's the worst that can happen in that situation?
Yeah, and I think what I've learned to do though is also value the inner critic and really listen to that voice and rather than reject it, because I think it's really easy to, maybe there's a part of you that's scared, right? You're about to make a new career move or change jobs or apply for a new job or start a business, and there'll be part of you that's anxious and scared. And I think I used to try and like really cut that side of me off and wouldn't talk about my emotions. I wouldn't be vulnerable. I wouldn't share how I felt. And then I think over time I've learned to kind of bring that part of me in and find spaces where that part of me, that small, scared, tired little boy, give him room to talk, and that can then resolve and you can feel more confident and able to move forward.
And now we're going to hear back from Adrienne one more time about the community she has built around her career, because relationships is one of the things that we talk about and focus on in You Coach You. And she's got a great community that we could all learn from how she's developed that. How consciously have you built that community around your career?
God, that's a great question, because I definitely don't think at the start that it was a conscious choice. Probably now in reflection, I know how important it is. And it's interesting when you mentioned about your parents, and I guess that feeling of them instilling in you that you could do anything and try anything and then being happy to fail. Because I think mine was probably really the opposite of that, actually, and just thinking, I think I definitely felt as a young child quite independent, but in a way that was like, well, actually, there's no one really to do it except you. And you can kind of go, well, actually, also, we mentioned as well around doubt and self-doubt. And sometimes I think, is your doubt self-doubt, or is it someone else's doubt within you? You know, for example, a teacher or a parent. No, seriously, because it can be that you're like, actually, that person may have doubted you and not think that you can necessarily achieve. And again, we're going right in there. But, you know, back at school, I don't think any of my teachers probably thought that I could read a book, let alone write a book. And for me and my siblings, there wasn't this expectation of us to achieve anything. And we're all high achievers, and it's interesting that idea of self-doubt, sometimes it's other people's doubt, and you can go, actually, you've underestimated me, and that can be quite motivating to, you know, we can have a bit of a chip on our shoulder maybe and think, oh, I'm going to show you. But actually, I think it can be, regardless of whether it's a good or a bad, you know, I said I'm an optimist, you can really channel that. And so the question about network is that maybe because I didn't necessarily have that, I've always really, really valued friendships. I've always valued, as I said, I'm an extrovert. I value conversation. I ask a lot of questions. I'm curious. And so it's probably partly my personality anyway. But I think having other people, creating my own family, creating my own network of friends or people that I can, I guess, lean on for support, or people who I can ask for advice, or people who I can champion them and lift them up and say, you know what, you're fantastic, you should go for that. I'm the ultimate encourager. I will be the one to tell you, you should do it, you should start a business, you should write a book, you're fantastic, you should go for it. And so in turn, people get that energy and then they're like, actually, Adrienne, you're right, I can do it, and you're great. And I'm like, I know. It's just like, it's this idea of like hyping each other up to the point where that network becomes so powerful that you're like, I can introduce you to that person, oh, I know this person, I'm going to email them now, and you become like a connector. So, building your own network is really powerful. And if you don't have one, or if you don't feel like you have a career coach or people in your support, you can go out and find those people and create it later on.
And so now you're going to hear Helen talk to Drew Povery. Some of you might know Drew if you watched Educating Manchester. And Drew talks a bit about progression and how he has developed in so many different directions in his career, and how he made choices and thought about his squiggle and where his squiggle could take him. And then we go into talking to both Drew and Lee about purpose, about what purpose means to them in their career, and how they really have connected all the dots together to have a career and to spend their time doing work that feels really purposeful and meaningful for them.
What has connected those different careers that you've gone through?
It's a really good question, one of which, it was only when we've been talking about it, I've probably reflected on it, loads of different careers. To me, it doesn't seem like that. So it might do, you know, head teacher, working in sport, doing a lot of leadership, coaching, keynote speaking, helping shape organisational culture, loads of different things, and some weird ones, like I was a doorman.
I didn't know that.
I know, yeah. I think a lot of it came about was, you know, we've all seen the graph, haven't we? And I love the squiggly term as well, because you've got like performance over time. Success is not linear. You know, it's ridiculous. One of the things I really disagreed with in schools about 10 years ago was, you know, these flight paths of progression for kids. Who learns like that? Life's not like that, is it? It's not linear. I think it was the fact that I always wanted to kind of help people develop. That's why I got into coaching very, very early, sports coaching, way before education, and then started to work in elite sport. It was about helping those athletes develop, and then it went into teaching, because at the end of it I thought, well, I need a backup for sport, and I ended up becoming, my degree was in PE, sports science, theology, philosophy, and RE, all rolled into one, which is good for being a rugby playing monk. Unique. Or whatever, unique, yeah. Only me in the world that's got a degree like that. But so I ended up becoming an RE teacher, P was full. And again, for me, it didn't seem bizarre. You know, I'm doing sport, that's helping people develop. Well, I'll be a teacher and that'll be helping people develop. And then I'll write some leadership stuff because I think that'll help people develop. And I'll coach people because that'll help people develop. And I'll do some keynotes because that. So for me, it seemed to make sense. It was only when you were looking at me going, what exactly the hell do you do, man? Like, when we've had our conversation, I was going, well, it just makes sense to me. So I think that's probably what I'd say. It makes sense to me, but it was all by accident, not design. It just seems, things seem to feel right because of the skill set that I thought I had at the time.
And it's almost like it's become very purposeful for you now to do different things that can help people develop.
Yeah, everything's about that. So our business is not run, commercially, and there has to be a commercial side. We don't choose our work based on that. We work with the police, we work with Greater Manchester Cancer, the Christie, I'm on with them Thursday. We do work in elite sport, I'm working with the Welsh Rugby Union tomorrow, Hull KR Rugby League team, working in football. But we choose the work based on impact. Can we help those people develop? We do it, regardless of the money. If we can't help them develop, then we'll probably not do that because it's not in our skill set, and I know, where that is and where it's not.
So Lee, just continuing on the purpose, and the final chapter in the book is all about purpose. What does that mean for you when you're thinking about having a purposeful career or having a meaningful career, or whatever word really works for you? What does that mean for you? What's your starting point?
Well, the starting point is never going to someone on Instagram who says, I'll help you find your purpose. Because we all know deep down that we kind of uncover it little by little, chiseling away, gradually starting to get a little bit more of a vision of what we are underneath the skin. And the starting point for me was always to reflect back on the journey that I've been on, to look at the things that I enjoyed and drill a bit deeper into why, but then also to flip that, the things I didn't enjoy in the workplace, the people I didn't enjoy working with, and really starting to dig a little bit deeper into why I didn't enjoy that scenario, why I didn't enjoy working in that position, why I didn't enjoy that atmosphere. And what I gradually found by asking myself those questions, it was really started to become more clear. There was an underlying thread across all the different careers that I'd had, whether I was working in corporate finance, elite sport, local government, video games, psychology. There was always an underlying thread, very similar to Drew's. I got a lot of fulfillment from empowering and enabling others to do more than they were currently doing. And for me, starting to see that no matter what business I was running, no matter what job I was in, it was always that pushed me on to be happy and fulfilled in the work that I was doing. And that didn't mean that I'd go to work bouncing and skipping in every morning. I'd like to pretend that I do that now. Some mornings I'm peeling myself up. My kids have been, running riot during the night. But more than ever, that purpose is gradually digging down to find those roots, the roots of you that have started to spread, all the different skills on those roots. But you don't live as a tree on your own. You're in a forest. There's lots of other people's roots under there as well. They cross. You collaborate with more people than you generally believe, and your purpose can also be found through those collaborations with other people, as they will often have a vision of you that you don't always have of yourself. And just one thing that I suggest everyone do, once they've started to master some of the skills in You Coach You, you can then take it a step further and start supervising yourself as you coach yourself, and go into the third person and start to write your own scripts, like you were writing a Coronation Street scripts, because sometimes seeing yourself in third person, you actually start to see your purpose flowing as you navigate the world, almost like you're an actor in a soap opera.
So we really hope you have got a bit of a feel for what those events were like, and you've been inspired by some of the conversations that we had with people. We thought it was really important to try and bring to life some of those things that we address in the book, and I hope that has done that for you. If you do want to hear more, so as we said, you can get the extended edits, you can get the links to those in the show notes, and they'll be on our website, amazingif.com. Of course, if you want some support with any of those areas, that is what the book is there for. Each of the chapter has lots of ideas for actions, lots of coach yourself questions. You Coach You is a book designed to help you support yourself so that you can overcome challenges that are sort of inevitable in our squiggly careers and take control as much as you can when it might feel like quite a lot is changing around you. We know that coaching is one of the ways that you can take back a bit of control over your career.
So as always, we really appreciate you all listening and spending your precious time with us. We hope you found the episode useful, and we'll be back again next week. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.